to run the carousel, you need the longer NMR tubes. They're going to be quite a bit longer than the other ones. So you can see in terms of height, it's a little bit longer. It's like 2 centimeters longer. And what we have to do is we have to set up our stuff with the sample holders, and they look like this for this NMR. So once your tube is cleaned off, make sure it's cleaned off. We're going to insert our sample into the sample holder, like so. And then we are going to put it in the carousel. Now, one thing to check with the carousel is that on the carousel, right now I have it off. The red light means that it's off. When it's off, I can spin it around. So I'm going to put my sample in slot number 12. If my sample does not fit nicely in the slot, like if I have to force it, if I don't just like put it in there and it just falls in there, that means that sample holder might be a little bit warped and we need to take it out. So I put my sample in there, I have it in 12. Now make sure I have no sample inside the probe, and I'm going to turn on the carousel. Before I turn on the carousel, I'm going to go to spin flow. And notice that on the screen, the little cog wheel with a little arm thing is red. That means the carousel is not on. So I'm going to turn the carousel on. And to turn the carousel on, you press the green button. If you want the carousel off, you press the red button. So I'm going to turn it on, and then the carousel turns on and becomes green. And now we have to make the carousel read everything. But if you look, now it goes, the little cog goes from red to white. So I'm going to click on it. If you click on it, it opens the setup for the carousel. So I'm going to stand in front of the light so you can't see it. So it looks like this. So similar to running regular NMR, we have to give things names and find folders and things like that. We know that our sample's in 12, so I'm going to tell it that I'm in position 12, and I'm going to name my sample. In this case, I have phenylalanine in my sample, so I'm going to name this L-phenylalanine so that I know what this is. And then, so once I named it, I need to tell it what folder to put everything in. So I'm going to select the folder. So it's just going to go in my folder. I'm going to select that. So it's just going to end up in my folder. So if you need to make your own folder, that's fine. And then our next thing is we have to tell it how we want to run it. So there are ways of making a queue of things that you want. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to go in here, and if I want to run a proton NMR, I select Observe Proton here. I'm going to click Carbon, and you'll see that you'll have different choices. If I want to have any of these other options, and if you want to know what those are, these are standard names for these things. So FIDH is how we run proton NMRs, but if you wanted to do a solvent removal, that's usually wet and some other stuff. So I just want to run my FID with the proton, so I'm going to select this one. And then I need to name the experiment because it's going to make a folder. I'm going to name this also phenylalanine. So under the experiment name, I'm going to name it. I can come up with like a custom way that I want to run it, and if that's the case, then I can select the custom way, but I don't have anything customized, so I'm just going to leave that. And on the software, what I want to do is, if I'm telling it to run Proton, now those parameters are going to come back up again. So I'm going to tell this, I want it to scan 32 times. If you know the relaxation time, you should put that in. And if I know whatever other parameters, I can put that in. So it's telling me it's going to take about 6 minutes to run. And I'm going to hit save. And now it's listed in the list for my carousel as pending. Now, before I do anything, I want to update my carousel. So you can see there's a button that says update. And what it will do is spin the carousel to recognize what's in the carousel. So if I go over here, I've now kind of recognized the dots mean things have been, there are samples there. The yellow means it's pending, etc. And the red mean that there was a problem. So those samples that had a problem, I already fixed them, but it keeps remembering that there's a problem. So the only way to stop that is to actually delete a sample. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell my sample to go. Now I can add more experiments. And so actually I'm going to do that. I'm going to add carbon NMR. So I'm going to go over here, add carbon. I'm going to swap this so that this becomes carbon. And then I want to regularly run a FID. XX means carbon in this case. And I want it to scan my sample. I'm going to say 1,000 times. Okay. Again, we got to put our name in here. Not your name, but the name of what you want your folder, because it's going to name it based on that. So I've named it. I'm going to save it. Now I can make just a thing where it runs both of those two things back to back. I just don't have anything run, and you can see I have my sample in there. Now, it's telling me that this is 21 minutes, and I know that I needed this to scan 1,000 times, which should be an hour, so I'm just going to check it. And now you can see it fixed it from 21 minutes to an hour, so I just checked to make sure that I saved it correctly. So then the last thing you do is hit go. And while it's running, let's say, so it's going to find my sample. It's going to spin the carousel, find my sample. Once it finds my sample, it's going to take the little arm to collect from the sample holder, and that's why it's important that your sample can't be too heavy, because it needs to pick it up, and if it's too heavy, it can't really pick it up. It's going to gently insert it, and it's going to keep the arm there. Whenever overnight this might be done, it's going to then go back to the standard sample in slot 25 and just run it. So now it's running my sample, it's running the proton. It's going to take, I set it to scan a certain number of times, so it's going to take about 5 minutes. When it's done, it's going to run the carbon. Now, let's say I set up my sample and I want to set up some other stuff while this is running. If I click on the little cog wheel, the sample thing comes back up and you can still say it's running. So if I wanted to see that while things are running, I could do that. And I can set up new samples so I don't have to keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the next thing to run. You can just go ahead and open that and keep running it. Now, if there's a problem, a couple of problems that occur is, again, if the sample holder doesn't fit in, it might boot everything out. If you need to fix something or change something, you can do that. So you can see that in use is my sample, it's orange, and it's going to be running that. And then let's say I want to rerun something. I can go back in, find that sample, and drag it over. And when I drag it over, I can rerun that sample. So what I'm going to do is make sure that my little label that I have is left here, so in case there's a problem, I can do that. Now, the last to do logbook that's by the computer. So you're going to go in there, find your logbook, open the logbook, and we're going to sign it. Anytime you use the NMR, you don't have to write your, like you're getting your data or anything like that, but you do need to write that you're running it. So I'm signing my name, the methods that I'm running. I'm doing proton, carbon, I'm using chloroform, and as long as I left my little label here on the desk in that folder, I can take my little label and store it here, so if there's a problem, somebody can help figure it out, or when I come back, I know where my sample